So for this month's CPD talk session, our topic of discussion is Constructing Change, a roadmap for digital transformation in the construction industry. And I'm joined today by our guest speaker, Dan Milligan. So Dan is a seasoned chartered surveyor, bringing a wealth of expertise to the table. After a number of years refining his expertise in the field, Dan made a significant career shift to take the helm of a successful company focused on contract administration and project management software. He's been instrumental in steering numerous consultancies through their digital transformation journeys, offering insights and strategies honed from real-world experiences. Throughout the session today, Dan will delve into the intricacies of digital transformation, providing you with a comprehensive understanding of the process. He aims to equip listeners with a practical guidance on identifying and evaluating cutting-edge technologies, as well as organising workflows and teams to maximise the benefits of those digital advancements. So, hi Dan, thank you for joining us today.
Hi there, how are you? You well?
Yeah, I'm all good, thank you. How are you?
Good. Yeah, I'm very well, thank you. Very well.
Perfect. So at the end of this session, Dan is going to be answering some viewers' questions. So if you do have any questions related to digital transformation in the construction industry, please do write them in the comment box, and then we can pass them over at the end. But for the moment, Dan, can you firstly tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, so like you said earlier, I was a chartered surveyor for a number of years. I used to work for Faithful and Gould, and then I worked for a smaller consultancy called Stuart Watson. And I worked there for a number of years, and then I sort of moved into the software space. So I run multiple projects when I was in consultancy. I've moved over now, founded Frame Solutions, and we work with hundreds of different quantity surveyors, contract administrators, building surveyors, and I lead the company now.
Perfect. Well, thank you very much, Dan. That's perfect. So just for those of you who have joined us a little bit late, I'm just going to give you a bit more context on what we're going to be discussing today. Dan is going to be sharing his knowledge on digital transformation on the construction industry. There will be some time for questions afterwards, so if you do have any questions based on today's session, please pop them in the comment box and we will endeavour to get through as many as we can in the time that we have. But hopefully we can get through everyone's questions and address all of your concerns later. So I'm going to crack off with some questions that we've got here. So firstly, can you please give us a little bit more information to give us some more understanding on what is actually meant by digital transformation in the construction industry?
Sure. So, like I said earlier, I'd like this talk to be quite interactive at the end, but mainly we're just going to sort of try and work through digitalisation, where we've come from, where we want to get to. We'll look at some examples from other verticals, and so I want to give some real practical experience because we've taken a lot of consultancies through. I want to give some tangible experience of how to actually implement this in your consultancies. But to answer your question, there's sort of three levels of digitalisation. So the first one is digitisation. Now, this is converting analog information into digital format. So that's basically going from paper to a digital format. Most companies have now done that, right? The next is digitalisation. So that's utilizing digital data to streamline your processes. So it involves more just converting data. It's about sort of rethinking operations and processes within the business. And the next and the last one is digital transformation. So that's a holistic change in the organization and culture and the operation of how that business fundamentally works. So we could look at a quick example of that and how someone's gone through those three levels of digitalization. So a good example would be, healthcare. So electronic health records. I remember a time when you used to go in sort of to the GP and he used to have a little paper folder, and that was, all of your health records used to be there, and he used to twiddle away, and everything was kept as a record against you in that paper folder. Now we've gone to electronic health records, right? So we've gone to digitization. We've taken it from paper now to a digital format. And what can happen now is that you can get, 2, 3 doctors, different consultants that can all feed into one electronic health record. So we can all collaborate on one item. So that would be seen as more as of digitalisation, because now we're taking it one step further. The process of that is now streamlined. We can access that information from anywhere. We can bring people in. We can put X-rays in there against company files, things like that. And then digital transformation is holistic change. Now we're seeing consultations online, so you can access your medical records because it's all in one area. We can do consultations on what has happened in your doctor's consultation, and then we can do analytics off the back of it, so data analysis off the back. So that would be going from a doctor that used to write everything down on a bit of paper all the way through to how it's done now.
Perfect, thank you. So those, I guess, would be the 3 levels of digitization that we see advertised and spoken about online. Is that correct?
Yeah. So, sorry, can you just repeat that again?
So you were speaking about there being 3 levels of digitization. So would you say it was like an even split between the 3, or?
Yeah. So just one more thing before we go any further. Some people are emailing me saying they can't get in. So I'm not sure if everyone's in that should be, because I'm getting a few private emails on that.
Okay, I can see some comments coming in from people that are in.
That's fine. Okay.
So I will just message the tech team about that quickly.
That's all good. But to answer your question, is it an even split? So, I mean, this depends, right? This depends on the different verticals you're looking at and the different industries, and how long different industries are against these journeys. So, a good one to look at that is a good comparative. So we looked at healthcare, right? Another good one is sort of sales. So a good example of this is like CRMs, so customer relationship management tools. You'll see a lot of companies now have CRMs. So the way that used to be done was, you all sort of go into this VP of sales office, and here there was a whiteboard there, right? And then you'd all sort of say what your sales target was, how far along you were, and stuff like that. And there was only one person that can change that, and that was the VP of sales. But there was this whiteboard that just had the forecasts on. And it had a little note on it, so, do not erase, do not adjust without the VP of sales. And we've now seen a total shift of that, because everyone used to sort of send in their Excels or their words of what their sales target was, what they've hit, what they've got in the pipeline, what they intended to close this month. And now we've seen that progress, right? So a lot of companies won't do that now. They get a CRM where they've got a collective body of information, and they can basically, everyone can feed into that. So we've got this single source of truth now, where we can forecast deals, we can see all the relevant information, what customers bringing in what revenue. So we've sort of seen that one go through the whole transformation again, and it's, most companies have a CRM, and there's a lot of CRMs out there. But that's just sort of kind of another vertical to look at, because if we look at construction, right, we're kind of doing that now. So we've got Excels, so we're going to do our cost reports on Excels, all our contract admin, and we get all of these Excels and spreadsheets, and then we put the data in different areas, right? And then we send it out and we publish it, and things of that nature. But we just need to keep updating them all the time, right? So we send them through to our client, the cost report. We would, update the figures from our instructions, but we're sort of still in that realm of what the guys in sales were doing, 10, 15 years ago. So that's a good vertical to look at to see sort of the approach and the path that we need.
Perfect, brilliant, thank you. So as someone with a direct link to the industry, what have you seen over the past year regarding digitisation?
Yes. So again, one more thing before I go on. I've got a couple of emails here saying, does anyone have an update of when this event is due to start? So I'm not sure if we are live because I'm still getting a few messages
So
come through.
I've had an
But
update from our team that we are live on LinkedIn.
okay,
So it should be working,
that's okay.
but I will get the team to send over a link for you via email as well that you can send to those
That's
who are trying to
perfect.
join.
Okay, great. So sorry, can you just repeat that question for us?
Yeah, of course I can. So my question for you is that as someone with a direct link to the industry,
Hmm.
what have you seen over the past year in regards to digitisation?
Sure, yeah. So, like I said, we work with consultancies. You know, we've got hundreds of consultancies that we've worked for, and I'm very privileged that I get to get sort of see the inside line of all these consultancies and where they are and how they're moving along through this transition. What we've seen is increased adoption of cloud computing, which is fantastic. Most people are now getting onto the cloud. That may be in a little bit of a push from COVID, and they're getting off their servers into cloud computing to sort of enable that remote working and collaboration, which is fantastic. The second is we've seen more software been picked up from these consultancies. So that's softwares like Costex, Bloombeam, CRMs like we spoke of earlier. And we're seeing this because it's the next generation from Excel. So we're seeing the sort of the next generation of digitization, and people are migrating off Excel and they're starting to use more data-based softwares, which allows them to collaborate all this information like we spoke of in the CRM and to get better visibility and streamline some of those processes. So in the market, that's what we're seeing the most of. There's also a consistent trend of putting more information online with customers. So we've seen a trend come from, customers from other verticals. They want information instantly. Just like, with your bank, you don't wait for the monthly statement anymore. You go on, you have a look via your app, right? That's gone through digitalization. And clients want to see more of that in the construction industry where they can get live data, live updates, and see exactly what's going on in their projects. So they're the three main things I would say that we've seen as an industry trend this year.
Brilliant, thank you. So as someone with experience, what would you advise others to look out for and what industry trends can be expected within this area?
Well, in construction,
Yeah.
yeah, sure. So we're still seeing a lot of firms running manual processes. So we're still at the start of the wave in construction. There's still a lot of document-based systems that can be made better. So when looking out for trends in the industry, my advice might be a little bit against the grain here. So I think we really need to look at tangible software and technologies that are market proven and that can deliver results in your business, streamlining capability. So there's a lot of hype around different elements at the moment, but what we should be doing is looking at tangible results that we can deliver. So there's a next generation of tools that are going to replace Excel. And that's the new paradigm where it's going to be more of a database centric and not a document based centric movement. So when we're moving from paper and putting into spreadsheets, that was a big step forward. When we went from paper and then we went to spreadsheets on shared file servers, that was a big step. That was a huge step in the transformation. But we're now taking that one step further because in essence, Excel is a series of formulas and sheets that make up a holistic view. So what we should be looking for is trying to sort of replace those Excels and Word documents that we're trying to do that with software that can do it a hell of a lot quicker and easier than how we're doing it now. So that would be my advice in looking out for trends. So look at this to sort of streamline your workflows and efficiencies that can have sort of large impacts on your business. And you do this via capability mapping, and we can talk about that later. I will talk about that. But small, slow and steady improvements is what you should be looking for. It doesn't have to be a silver bullet, but that's what is the most effective method of doing it.
Oh, thank you. So from experience, can you kind of talk us through what happens when you go from documents to databases?
Sure, yeah. So I've touched on this a little bit with like a couple of examples that I've given, but basically, yeah, what we're doing with Excel, that's proven to be a very powerful tool for surveyors. And we've run basically a lot of our projects off that for a number of years. But when we go to the database, we've got two real distinct advantages over that. So it provides change control and version control on an item level and not just a document level. So at the moment, we may do several revisions of the same document, but we can't do it on an individual line item. So we've got that sort of visibility through the whole database to see what's changed, what versions, and we can link them together very easy. So at the moment, like I said earlier, we may do we may put information into an Excel document or into a Word document which we then have to replicate in multiple different areas. So we do, let's say, an interim payment certificate, then we now have to put that into a cost report, put that into a portfolio dashboard, put that into a project dashboard. So we have to move this information multiple times. Whereas with a database, you can map that information in 3 different areas instantly, rather than the surveyor having to do it manually, which causes, it burns fees off of projects because you're basically replacing it with man hours to do it. And it also opens the door to mistakes and errors because you're now manually moving things in different areas. So again, if we look at what makes up our projects at the moment, it's a collection of Excel spreadsheets that manage the project, and the information is represented in multiple cells and multiple sheets. And what the database allows you to do is have become one instance where you can change, and it will change it in multiple areas. And you can also draw from different data sources. So for instance, in our software, you can draw from the program. So it's not just now what can we put in Excel, we can draw it from multiple numbers, programs, various different data sources rather than just an Excel.
Perfect. So from that, I'm going to ask you a bit more of probably a technical question. So how do you think digital methods enhance traceability on decisions, root cause analysis, and root cause corrective action?
Yeah, good question. So in essence, digital tools provide more of a clear audit trail because we can apply signatures on things and stuff like that. Well, we know when people have touched certain elements. So, when we again, I'm going to take it back to our software, but when we publish certificates under the contract, we know exactly when they were published, who published them, what times, when the deadlines are from that. So, that's going to allow more traceability, and it's going to give you more visibility to see what's coming up. So we're now, there's almost like tripwires, you could call them, in databases, which is going to trip something up to say, well, you need to do something by this point. You can start being a lot more proactive on what's actually happening in your projects. So it enables better tracking, better management, and it leads to more accountability and quality control because you've got the visibility that you need to say, well, that needs to happen in that project. That person hasn't done that, which is difficult when you're doing it all on documents because it basically relies on you doing that.
Thank you. So what I would like you to do for me now, if you don't mind, Dan, is can you please go through some examples where systems can double check, verifying routine operations or transactions, and free up surveyors to work on higher level challenges that require their expertise.
Yeah. So most software, the whole point of some of this software is basically trying to replace low value tasks that you're undertaking with high value tasks. So things such as like admin based activities, software should be alleviating that because it can do it way quicker than a human can. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to remove low value tasks, replace them with higher ones. So that gives clients, you know, better outcomes because they're getting higher value tasks by the surveyors. It's better for the companies because am I on mute?
Oh, no, I think I was just about to say, I think your volume went, but you're back now.
Okay, that's all good.
You're all back.
You hear some of it, or was I blank?
We had the start, but if you could perhaps just kind of recap on what you've already covered.
Sure, yeah. So I think I got up to low value tasks and replacing them with high value ones. So some examples of this is, surveyors, they will go and do monthly meetings. There'll be actions off the back of their meeting minutes. They have to chase these actions. That is a low value task. People have gone to uni for, 4 years. They've done their chartership for another 3 to 4 years, and they're then stuck chasing up actions. So it also burns the fee to death because you're just doing low value tasks. So if you can automate that, then you can save a lot of time and you can save, that jarring experience for project managers to chasing up actions. That's one example. You can also get alerts from contractual obligations. So again, when we've got a systemized approach, and it's the same with CRM or any other software, we can see holistically across the company. So if someone leaves or if they're on holiday, you're going to get a prompt to say, well, this needs to happen, or what is happening in that account. I can go and have a look, and it will all be in one area. So that's what we're talking about when we verify, routine operations. And the check inside of it, again, you're going to get these alerts that if you do via documents, you have to, in essence, go back over the meeting minutes and see who should have done what, or you need to put it in a calendar. It drives it into more of a manual process. The last one is it can remove a lot of the errors as well. So when I was in practice, sometimes you use some of these beaten up old Word Excel documents, and they're fantastic, but sometimes the formulas have been knocked out, or we don't know where the formula is, or it's not lining up correctly. And in essence, what that means is that your formulas are sort of laid out, that they're just sort of open to attack almost, where if it's on a database, these formulas are protected and they can't be moved and changed. So what you need it to do, it will do every time, and it's not as fragile as some of those Excels.
Thank you. What I do want to do just very quickly, Dan, sorry to ruin the flow a little bit, is just to remind people that if they do have any questions that they would like to ask, just to pop them in comments in the kind of below the video, just so that then we can go through those at the end as well, because there are some people that have joined us a little bit later. So they are welcome to ask questions. If they pop it in the comment box below the video, I will get around to them at the end if we do have the time. But kind of back onto topic, I would like to obviously kind of ask you, what do you think the primary factors driving, what are the primary factors, driving customers to switch to your platform? And could you possibly share some insights on what attracts them to your services?
Sure. So there's four, I would say there's four key drivers that draw people to our platform. And we're a contract admin project management software. The first is consistency. So we spoke about earlier about documents, databases. I've spoke about that at length. But what happens is when you get onto a system, you can now have a consistency and control. So we see this a lot in larger consultancies where they want consistency, but everyone's got their own cost report that they've got on their desktop, or they're using, certificates that they've just decided to use. There's no sort of central hub where they can get that consistency and control. So they want to have that consistency, whereas someone picks up a document, they can say, right, I know that's from X, Y, or Z surveyors, and we can provide that. The second is efficiencies. So most companies want to be more efficient. And we provide that by, again, what we spoke about earlier about lowering those low value tasks and replacing them with high ones, and how we can map this data out so we can get to sort of, the 3 birds, 1 stone effect. So 1 input and 3 outputs. The third is visibility. So operationally, a lot of people want to see exactly what's happening in the company and what is happening in these projects, so they can see and control operationally what's happening. So again, with files and folder paths, it's difficult to see. There's a lot, you have to have project meetings and updates, whereas if you've got an itemized system, it's very easy to see that, and you're also going to get the prompts from an operational point of view. The fourth is market differentiation. What we provide is you to set yourself out of the norm when it comes to other surveying companies, because we provide portals that can be branded to your brand, and you can go to tender off the back of. Now these portals provide clients with real-time visibility into their projects. It all wraps them up on a portfolio view as well, so multiple people can come in and see these, all secure. You decide who you want on, but again, it's aligning with the vertical of, they expect that level of service in other areas that they're used to, such as banking and things like that, whereas when it comes to their projects, they have to wait a month and everything's sort of backdated. So market differentiation is the last one.
Brilliant, thank you. So we do have some questions coming through, just so you know, I will be asking them at the end. But for now, my next question for you is, it's quite a big one, I think, but what advice would you give to someone looking to start their digital transformation, and how to organise their workflows and their teams, and how to take full advantage of that?
Yeah, perfect. This is the part of the podcast I was most looking forward to. So if anyone wants to ask any more questions around this, I'm more than happy to give as much advice as I can around this, because it's the most important part. So when starting your digital transformation, earlier in the podcast we spoke about capability mapping, and I think that is the number one thing that you should do at the start. And the process of capability mapping is, in essence, you're identifying your business and the different areas in the business, and you're going to list out your capabilities. So, how do we acquire customers? How do we look after them? How do we deliver projects? Things like that. Then what we need to do is a hierarchy creation. So which ones are top of that list? Which ones are the most important? And we can break these down into subcategories, but put them in an order of what needs to be fixed first. Then alignment is the capability aligned to the overall business strategy. So we're assuring that we're achieving the organizational goals and objectives. Then we want to be looking at the performance of each capability, identify the gaps and the areas of improvement that we can do. So you've noted there, I've talked about nothing about software at all, because software is just a means to the end of achieving what the company needs to achieve. So digital transformation is not about technology, which, as much as it does sound, it's about rethinking old operating models, being customer centric, more agile and collaborative, and a data-driven organization. So everyone thinks it starts with the software. The software is the last point that you go to when you start undertaking a digital transformation.
Perfect, thank you very much for that. And so one more question for you, before I start taking some that have come in from viewers both on the LinkedIn, and we've also had some sent directly to us, is based on all that you have learned through the kind of progression into this role, how should software be evaluated?
Good question. Yeah. So thankfully enough, I get to work with some of the brightest minds around that who've worked for huge software organizations. Um, and this is how we guide our customers through. And in the coming months, I will be releasing a document, sort of a cheat sheet of how to evaluate software. But I'll start off with some main headings. The first is your cost benefit analysis. So return on investment by evaluating software, how to increase efficiencies, reduce costs, drive revenue. But it's very important to keep in mind that it's not all about efficiencies. So because that's a zeros numbers game, something's always going to take a certain amount of time. So how does it also drive revenue up? Because that's an infinite number. So look at it with those goggles on. The second point around that is that when we work with our customers, we want a before and after picture. So what are the tasks take now? How long do they take? What's the biggest pain points? We map that out and we extrapolate it out. And then once you finish your evaluation, you should be saying, right, well, this has been ticked off. This used to take, 7 hours. Now it takes 1. So there's an actual plan in place rather than, finger in the air. Yeah, this seems great, but no one can actually point at anything to say, yeah, this is working. So cost benefit analysis to start with. Need to look at the functionality of the software. So does it have the features that you need to meet the current business requirements that you've done in your capability mapping? Do those two things link up? The third, user experience and training. So it's not here's the software, see you later. Well, how are they going to support you through that? Then I would look at security and compliance. So what can they show to you to be secure, that they've got secure software and it complies to certain regulations, especially with the whole AI thing that's going on at the moment. You really need to scrutinize the security about how some of this stuff is coming around. So we spoke about some of those features. That would be, your initial discussions we're talking about here. When you feel like you've fleshed those out a little bit more, what we always say is, a small test before a large commitment. So you want to be taking subset groups, low risk groups where you're not, signing up for a 5-year term. And we can start looking back at the cost benefit analysis and seeing if those are mapping in the results. The last thing you should look at as well is an exit strategy. So what happens if this doesn't work out? Let's say you take a 3-month trial. If it doesn't work out, what happens? And we like to say you can come on the island, but you can get off the island. So if it doesn't work out with this software, I've still got all my documents, I can download them and I can carry on as usual. We're not sort of locked into something. So that's something you want to ask early doors is, what happens if this doesn't work out? Like I say, I will release a document on this in the coming months with a little cheat sheet, but they're sort of, I've done, 6 or 7 of the main headings there.
Oh, thank you. So what I am going to do now is pass over to some viewer questions. Again, just a quick note to anyone who does have any questions, if you could send them over and we can hopefully get through them before the end. But thank you so much for going through those first set of questions with me, Dan. I really do appreciate that. So I guess we've got a comment from Luke Roberts, who said that unfortunately they did miss the start, but they wanted to know if you were speaking about a specific software or software in general. There is a comment underneath that was saying it was to do with the general benefits of moving from a document model to a database model, but is there any particular software that you were discussing?
Sure. No, I was using a few examples at the start. So I spoke about CRMs and some different types of software. We're not talking about our software. Obviously, it bleeds in a little bit because we're very well versed in what we do. But this is for generic software in general. So the things I just listed off around what we should be asking vendors when you are evaluating software applies to all softwares. The same with if you're going to start your digital transformation. That process of the capability mapping is universal. That can be applied to any software at all. Well, what I was in essence saying is it's not just software. really. You're looking at your operations within the business, and then the software is the last piece of the puzzle.
Well, thank you. Hopefully that answers your question for you, Luke. So going to move on to the next question, which was sent in by Rebecca, who said, what role does change management play in successfully implementing a digital transformation roadmap, and what strategies can be employed to gain buy-in from employees and stakeholders?
Very good question. So it has a big role in, adoption of software. And I think, yeah, engaging stakeholders early doors is very important. And in the change management process, what we found that works quite well is a bottom-up approach. So I feel a lot of the reasons why softwares don't stick, and especially when I was in practice, is it sort of gets thrust upon you a little bit. And if you can go for a bottom-up approach, which is in essence softwares that surveyors or users actually want to use, then you'll get a better uptake, because it's now no longer an extra thing to do. It's something that they will want to use, but you'll get the aggregation of results higher up the food chain. So it's a good question, Rebecca, and I think, yeah, bringing in stakeholders from all the way up the management chain and the guys that are actually going to be using it is super important.
Perfect. Well, so I do have another question for you. Which ERP software can handle complex processes of mega construction projects?
It's a good question. So, I mean, there's multiple softwares out there that you can look into, and it really just sort of depends on your use case and what you want to use it for. Obviously, it's quite a broad range, and I wouldn't be in a position to sort of say this one's the best. It really depends on what you're looking to do, because there's such a vast array of different providers out there, and how you want to interact with it. So sorry, I'm kind of, ducking out of that question a little bit, but I hope that answers it somewhat.
Well, he answered it better than I ever could. So I feel like we're absolutely fine there. So I do have some kind of questions for you. And for those who kind of missed at the start, okay, so we'll go back to Rebecca just because they've popped another in, and then I've got some more questions lined up for you. But Rebecca has added on and said, what are some best practices for communication and transparency throughout the construction and execution of the digital transformation roadmap? Is that to keep all stakeholders informed and engaged?
Yes. Okay. Yeah. So I think what Rebecca's asking is, when we're evaluating software, how are we going to make sure that this is the right software and all stakeholders are informed and engaged? So generally, like I said, when you are picking up these softwares or you are evaluating software, you want that roadmap of how to get to the end. What is the end? So like I said earlier, software doesn't come before the end. We need to understand what we're trying to achieve, and then we need to check in as we go through that roadmap. So what do we want to achieve in month 1? What about month 3? What about 1 year from now? And keeping those communication lines open, what's to be expected is, essentially important, really. So softwares that have taken people through that digital journey and do that digital transformation, we've seen the trends of how it goes and what works. And they should be able to advise on the best way to implement it and the best way to get to that end goal, split up into bite-sized chunks that we can achieve through checkpoints, in essence.
Perfect. Rebecca, I hope that helps answer your question. And just a reminder that if anyone does have any questions, we have just under 20 minutes left. So if you could please pop them in the comments box below, then we can get through them in today's session, and you can hopefully ask Dan any questions that you may have about digital transformation. I'm sure he'll be more than happy to help. But so I did want to kind of link back. So for those that missed the introduction for yourself, I kind of spoke about how you made a significant career change. So you'd spent time obviously in chartered surveying, and then kind of came about this shift. And I was wondering if you wouldn't mind sharing with us at all, like why you decided to make that shift and why you decided to push your career in this direction.
Yeah, sure. So, like I say, I was in consultancy for quite a while, and basically what I found was I kept doing the same things over and over again. So when I was running the projects, I come to my project, I'm going to be doing the same tasks repetitively, and it gets to a point, and I don't know about the other guys on the call, but you do juggle a hell of a lot of plates, and there's quite a lot of pressure on. And there was a lot of times where I was like, I'd love to get a little automation to say, Danny, you need to do your interim payment, or this is practical completion is coming up in 2 weeks. So I really felt under pressure from that. And I really wanted something that would help me sort of handle all of those plates. I also found myself, repetitively doing these reports where I would put the same information over and over, but I felt a little bit like an admin clerk when I'd done all this training, and the real cool stuff that I wanted to do, I couldn't do because I was all cogged up. So it stemmed from really my own frustration. And after I'd done it for a while, it's like, well, these are not, there's not real big variables here. We're running through the same process over and over. But if I can make this better, more efficient, you know, better for users. And I had a lot of chart surveyors around me, so bouncing ideas off of them, and how they would want to interact with it. And we've seen great success from it because it does make everyone's lives easier. It does make companies more money. So that was really where it sort of come from my own experience, and it took that sort of sidestep into the software world, and solutionized in essence what we were doing just in Excels and Words and Microsoft projects, and amalgamated it into something that was really useful for surveyors.
Well, so kind of based on that, with some kind of professional conversations that I've had with people working within the industry, one theme that constantly comes up for me in discussion is the feel that there can sometimes be, perhaps not everyone feels this way, but for individuals, they feel like there's not much reflection time once you've completed a project or worked on a project. And they kind of quite often say that they'll finish a project, and rather than sit and think what went well, what can we do differently next time, it's
Mm,
just up and on to the next thing straight away. So do you feel that having this kind of digitization has enabled you to reduce the amount of time that you are spending on documents and paperwork and Excel spreadsheets, and
mm.
has it freed up time for reflection on the work that you've been doing?
Yeah, that's a great point, because you don't get, like you say, you're on to the next project, and you where's the lessons learned? What data can we look back on and say, oh, in these projects, these were high risk items, the program was extended X, Y, and Z because of these reasons. That information almost gets thrown in the bin or just forgotten about. But when you get onto these databases, you can really crunch in and see exactly what's happening and why these projects have gone certain ways, because it's all unified and structured. So I think that's a really good point about reflecting on what's happened in these projects and getting a bit of breathing room around it, but also having the information to be able to easily see it as well. So without going totally off piece, this is like a knowledge share. So knowledge sharing is, the QS, he knows everything about that project, but if he leaves, no one really knows what's going on. Whereas if you can knowledge share using the database, another QS can step in and he can see all of this information because it's not sitting in his emails or he's saved it in a subfolder where no one knows. We can search that. We can see exactly what's going on. So I think that's a very good point around reflection and giving the time to reflection, but also the data to be able to see that.
Fab, thank you. No, I know it was just something that had been mentioned quite a lot before, and I do think it's
Mm,
integral to bring up that reflection obviously is very important, and hopefully this kind of change towards digitization can save that time and give us that time to reflect on what we've been working on and what we've been doing.
yeah.
So another one that we have in is, how should organisations manage vendor relationships and partnerships to support the implementation of their digital transformation roadmap? And what criteria should be used to select the right partners?
Yeah, good question. So again, it kind of stems back to what I was saying about evaluating software. So organizations managing the vendor relationships and partnerships, asking the right questions early on. So you've done your capability mapping, asking around, performance and reliability. Is it cloud, on premise? Is it an offline? What ISO certs do you have? Do you do trial periods, or do we have to take a full contract term? What's the exit strategy? So asking those hard-hitting questions up front saves a lot of hassle in later on, but also you can evaluate multiple different softwares alongside of each other to ensure that you're getting the right one. But it all goes back to, in essence, the plan that you have at the start, and it requires patience and commitment up front. It's easy almost to look at the silver bullet and say, yeah, if we just get that software, everything's going to change, it's going to be great. But the reality is, if we need to do more upfront planning and just make sure that they align with the company's values and goals, to then go to the market and start talking to vendors, because you're going to have an itemized list, a checklist basically of what you want this to achieve, and you've got something tangible to say, yeah, this is going to work for what we need, rather than letting the vendor almost sell it to you. You're in control of the process then.
Well, thank you. So another one for you, and I think I want to word this one correctly, but I think across industries there are sometimes people that are not hesitant, perhaps, or reluctant to kind of change existing processes, regardless of what work you do. So if you were approached by one of these people that did have kind of negative connotations towards digitisation within the industry, what advice or what kind of examples would you say to them to counteract that?
So I think in the first instance it's very warranted. They should be, wary, because at the end of the day, the consultants we work with, this is mission critical software. What they deliver is project management services. So it's very easy to say, oh yeah, if you just get this new software, then it'll be great. And what you're doing is, in the past, and you shouldn't do that. So I understand that, yeah, it's operationally critical that the software works. Now, we can help guide them through that journey, and this is what I was talking about, taking the risk. The vendor should take the risk over to his side of the table in the first instance, to prove results. So what results do we want to achieve? Well, if someone's looking to buy software and say, oh, we want to get 10% more efficient. Okay, well, how do you want to get 10% more efficient? Okay, well, we haven't really thought about that, but maybe if we can map in multiple areas, it will be better. Maybe we can achieve that. Okay, well, why don't we put 5 people on the software? We can run a pilot program. It's that sort of measured approach that works the best, because I no issue with buyers being wary of software when it's fundamental to their business. It's up to the vendor, really, I think, to take them through that journey and show the results and show how we're going to do it. And a lot of times you'll see with, there's a lot of bashing in the construction industry. Everyone's behind, and you're all taking so long. But realistically, that falls, I feel, on the vendor's doorstep a little bit, because these guys are, they're intelligent people. They know what they're doing, and if they don't see the value and they can't prove the value, they're not going to transform. That's just how it is. So it's up to the vendors to take people through that journey, and show a low risk way of doing it. And then once we've got that data, we say, well, we've got 5 people, there's 100 people in the company. Now we can scale it up, right? It's a different animal, but we're proving results. We're not making it abstract. I think that's the real key with this stuff.
So almost clarity and like just clear communication is key.
Yeah, but proving results, isn't it? It's like
Mhm.
showing them the path of how they're going to do it. So, we want operational control. We want to see what's going out. We want, consistency in our templates. Okay, well, let's show you how we do it. So there's a way that people generally buy software. They have to understand what's going on first, then they will believe it, and then they'll act. So when you show them, they're just understanding, oh yeah, we've gone from a document to a database, this is how it works, you know we can achieve efficiencies like this. I'll show them some features. Then if they believe that, then they'll buy the software, right? Then we need to keep proving those results, and we're going through. So it is communication, but it's also, not making it an abstract concept where no one really knows what's happened. Someone's bought, and you see this a lot, where people buy a high ticket software. There you go, off you go. They think it's going to, change the company. There's no support. There's no aftercare. There's no target to hit. Whereas it should all be mapped out at the start, and you just take them through the journey. That's how I think it should be done, and we've seen good results of that.
I mean, that sounds perfectly like it makes sense to me, is that you support through each step. So the proof is in the pudding, should we
That's
say.
it. Proof is in the. You put it better than I have. The proof is in the pudding.
Thank you. So my next question for you is, if you were to start with the digital transformation within a company, where do you think, in your opinion,
Hmm.
is the recommended starting point? Like the very first step?
Yeah. So again, I'll keep it generic. It depends on the company. So depends what the company's doing, how far along they are, how well tenured they are. But it all comes back to that capability mapping of what do we want to achieve? Where are our bottlenecks? What do we need to make better? Now, once you've mapped that out, this isn't always operational control. It's like it can be, how are we providing the best value to our customers? Because as surveyors, we serve the public, right? So, like, how can we differentiate ourselves and add more value to our customers? Another one may be, how can we be operationally more efficient? Things like that. But it all comes down to just mapping this out, exactly what the company does: sales, marketing, HR, project delivery, project aftercare. They're all worthy of being mapped out, and you've just got to understand where you want to put the efforts in, and then from that point you can start doing your hierarchies, your alignment with the company goals, your assessments. And then if you do need software, that's when you go and evaluate your softwares. But it all stems from the processes in the company. I can't stress that enough, that it's not software first, it's processes first, and then we look at the software.
Thank you. Um, so thanks everyone for sending their questions. I do have one last one that I would like to end on. But I would really appreciate it, Dan, if you could give us an example of when you personally have been aided by digitisation within the process that sticks out in your memory.
Sure. Would you want me to be industry specific or just in the company in general, or?
I think, for the benefit of the viewers, industry specific would probably be the best one there.
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, I'll take it off of our software and explain a different software. I was a building surveyor for a number of years, and when we were doing survey programs, we would survey, schools, a large stock of buildings, and we'd have multiple surveyors doing that. You have 20 surveyors all doing different schools, different condition surveys. Now, this was the time when, the iPads started coming in and people were doing surveying on iPads. That was new. That was like a new thing. Before, we just had a set of plans, and I would just literally write down A, B, and C on the walls and stuff like that, and then we'd all have to go back to the office, all put in an Excel, all send the Excels into one, manager, and he'd collate the whole thing. Whereas when we went to the iPads, it was like night and day. Like, you would go through and you could upload the plans, you could start doing this, the condition of it, you could start doing the photos that would connect to the different rooms and stuff. And then on a portfolio view, you've got like all of this information, all, on a database, all listed out, like super easy to find, all collated. And that was like, you know, I'm looking at this thing like it's invented fire. You know, that was a time in industry where I saw a significant change in the market. And now, you know, it's almost taken for granted a little bit. But there was a time where that didn't happen. And reporting those large portfolios, there was a hell of a lot of work in that. So that's the main one that stuck out for me.
Brilliant. Well, thank you so much, Dan. I really appreciate your time today, and I really appreciate you answering those questions for me.
No worries.
So I just want to say a massive thank you again for joining us today. Thank you to all of our viewers who have submitted questions. Thank you for watching us today. And again, thanks to you, Dan. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you on and to get this opportunity to kind of prod you and probe your brain, I
No,
guess.
thank you for having me. Appreciate it. Thank you.
No worries at all. So for those of you who are wishing to claim a 1-hour CPD certificate for this session, my colleague is going to provide a link to our website in the comments where you can then go forward, click that and request your certification. But I would like to finish up by saying a final thank you to everyone for joining us today. I've had a fantastic time chatting with you, Dan, and I hope that you have had an equally good time kind of sharing your experiences and your thoughts and feelings on digitisation with us. And we will be returning with our LinkedIn live stream for another CPD talk next month. And we hope to see you all again soon. Thanks very
Great.
much,
Thanks so
everyone.
much. Cheers,
Take
everyone.
care.
Bye.
Bye.